Hey, Andy Chamberlain back with another tutorial. Last week's tutorial was 3 ways to spice up chord progressions, and in that tutorial, I used a lot of voicing and voice leading, and this one is about that. So, what is voicing? Voicing is where you play notes on the piano, where you play those chord tones. So if you have a C major chord, where are you playing those notes? In that case, I was playing them there, right? But where you play the notes, that's the voicing. Voice leading is how the notes move from chord to chord. All right, so that's this versus this, right? They're different, and that's two different voice leadings. So two methods we'll talk about for implementing voicing and voice leading today: inversions and open voicings versus block chords. So let's look at block chords. So block chords are when notes are as close as they can be. They're useful for not being too showy. Most common type of chord in pop music is a block chord. So that's this kind of thing, okay? You can't get the C, E, and G any closer together than this. So we've got some inversions as well. And our inversions are root position, first inversion, and second inversion. The way you get an inversion is by moving the bottom tone or the bottom voice up an octave. So we take this, and that's our first inversion. And then there's our second inversion. So that's how it works with three note chords. If you have a 4-note chord, then it's like that, right? So there are 4 inversions there: root, first, second, and third. So an open voicing is anything that's not a block chord. This is an open voicing. This is an open voicing. You know, just anything that's not a block chord is an open voicing. They sound more open, like the name suggests, and they maintain the harmony, however, so they're pretty useful. Orchestras, string orchestras, almost always have an open voicing going on because their instruments vary so much in range. So, you know, they'll have like, or whatever, the 5 voices of the string orchestra, and that's an example of a really, really wide open voicing. Yeah, so anytime you hear a string orchestra, you're probably hearing open voicings. So, voice leading. One very important part of voice leading is smoothest voice leading. That's what we call it, smoothest voice leading, and that is where you move as few notes as possible to get to the next chord, and the ones that need to be moved, move as little as possible. So this is smoothest voice leading. The C doesn't need to go anywhere because it's in both chords. These guys need to move because they're not in F, and we're trying to get to F major. And so we move them as little as we can up to there. Smoothest voice leading. So this is useful for synths or just any kind of instrument that sound good in a certain small range. So if we had a chord progression like this, doing them all in root position gives you that huge 10th range. But if we do them smoothest voice leading, it does that, and that is in only a 7th, which is a lot smaller, and you can put that, and you could do that in another inversion, so you could do it here. Right? And smoothest voice leading, really useful. It makes it sound dense and full, and it's very useful if you don't want to be too showy. So, next thing, voice leading in order to make progressions tend upward or downward. So if we had a bass line like this, we could have the chords go down even though the chords are going up. We could actually have the chords go down by doing different inversions of each chord. So we could go, so that's kind of interesting because you have the downward and the upward motion. They're kind of contrary. It's interesting. Another example, Hello by Adele. The chord progression goes like this. Right? So that chord progression does not keep each chord in root position. That E flat major chord is in second inversion, and that means that the chord progression tends to go downward as opposed to. And I think if it went up to that inversion, it wouldn't be as good as it was. So that was a great touch. It was a very, very, very simple chord progression, very little rhythmic variation, and absolutely just bare bones chords. But the inversion, I think, added a lot to the feel of it. It was all going down because it definitely wasn't a happy song and that kind of thing. So yeah, there you go. Voices and voice leading. There you are. So check out last week's tutorial for ways to add interest to the chords themselves. And I hope you enjoyed and learned something. Thanks for watching.